2, 1. Oh, it didn't give me the countdown. Hey, everyone. It is Rachel Dunn for #Real Talk with Rachel Dunn, episode 8. And actually, let me go ahead and go live from our other page. See, it counts down there.
Yeah, we didn't get the countdown.
Okay, so again, it's Rachel Dawn with #Real Talk with Rachel Dawn, episode 8. So I'm here with my friend Jessica tonight. For any of you who have read my book, Now What? A Story of Broken Dreams and the God Who Restores Them, then you have read Jessica's story. Jessica is chapter 12 in my story. But stay with us, even if you have read that. I'm going to make this a little closer because it feels real far away. There we go. Even if you have read my book and you've read her story, stick with us tonight because tonight we're going to tell the rest of the story. And it's going to be really exciting. So stick with us. We're pumped about it. So with all that being said, comment. Let me know that you're here. Yeah, everybody's logging in. So write in the comments if you would. I see Kevin said, howdy, ladies. Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, just say hey. Let me know that you're here. And as we start talking and kind of get going, if you would please share this video on your newsfeed. That would be super awesome so that people see it. And then also, let me know. Hey, Mary, how are you? Let me know a time in your life when you thought you had totally blown your life. Like when you'd messed up so badly that your life was over, that you'd blown your purpose, that there's no way that God could use you. Because I know that I have felt like that before. And that's a big part of what we're going to be talking about with Jessica's story tonight, because Jessica has felt like that. But like her story is a little bit different than everyone else's, right? Her
Slightly.
story is that she spent 4 years in a federal prison. But that's not everyone's story. In fact, that's not many people's story.
No.
But a lot of people can definitely relate and feel like, hey, I've totally screwed up and blown my purpose. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight.
No one thought it would ever be my story.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So to kind of get started, let everybody know who Jess is. Tell me, what was your spiritual life growing up, and when did you first develop a relationship with Jesus, and tell me what that was like.
Sure. Well, as far as growing up, I was raised in the Catholic Church, so I had a good foundation. I had parents that, raised us in, Catholic education, to start developing that relationship with God. So that was a great thing to start out with, all the way through high school. And then as far as as far as being saved and things like that, I had a good foundation to be raised off of, but I wasn't actually, officially for the churchy term saved, until I was in my 20s and started really developing that relationship with God. Just kind of all in kind of thing. I was 23. We were at a business conference and, they kind of were just talking about, kind of dedicating your life to God and making that next step. And, you just have this, this thing in your heart and you just feel it and you're like, I gotta go do something. It was just pretty much pulling me down there. Where I was kind of like, all right, this is, I know who you are, but now I really want to get to know who you are. I want to get to know who you are and also what you have for me, and what exactly that means. Like I said, I had the foundation for my faith, but not that really true relationship that, this is someone I can talk to on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. This is someone who's here with me on a daily basis, and we're in this together. Yeah. Kind of thing. So
yeah, that happened in your early to mid 20s.
Yes.
And then you met a guy.
Yeah.
And then, so tell me about the guy. Tell me kind of how that went.
Okay, so obviously I was, like I said, being, in a full-on relationship with God, and I don't think you really understand the fight that's for your life at that point in time, and that's something I don't feel like I was ever fully prepared for, which I don't think any of us really are.
Right.
But had some situations come in my life where that's, looking back on it, that was definitely that kind of situation. But I was, going to church, I was pursuing God, I was, doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, that, this, as a saved individual and going after it. And, I met a guy, and you know, as anything, like you said, as deception looks, it was wrapped up with a pretty little bow.
Right.
Looked awesome. Thought I was making all the right decisions. Thought I was doing everything, you know, that I was supposed to be doing, and it looked like everything I wanted. And like I said, looking back on it, it looks kind of crazy, but you know, at the time, I thought I was literally doing, you know, all the right decisions.
Right.
But you know, this relationship ended up being, you know, a very toxic one. Want something that I, you know, had a hard time removing myself from.
There was abuse.
And then, yeah, it was definitely a very abusive relationship, which that is a whole, we could spend a whole hour on the effects of that and the fear that becomes part of you and your life. You live every day just to survive that day, and do everything to, you know, prevent harmful things from happening. It becomes an obsession, and it becomes everything you think about every day, which that in turn didn't require time to think about God or to think about my relationship with God. I didn't have any time to think about that anymore. So that kind of went to the wayside, but which in turn, I mean, I lost my compass. I lost my guidance. I didn't have a guidance, you know, system anywhere to show me what to do anymore. So you kind of lose hope when you lose that.
Right.
You know, you lose what you thought was guiding you. And then when all that's gone, you know, like I said, you just kind of lose hope, and you're like, well, maybe this, you know, maybe this wasn't a journey I thought I was on.
Right. But, yeah. So Jess meets this guy, and he looks like Mr. Wonderful, and so we were kind of going over like parts of the conversation before we started filming, and I said, so then you started making like not awesome decisions, and she's like, but the thing is, like, I thought they were the right decisions, right? And so that's when we got in the conversation that she alluded to, that we talked spiritual warfare a couple months ago, right? Like, your enemy is really, really, really awesome at deception, and he takes even the things that you want and wraps them up in a pretty little package and makes it look very intriguing and very enticing, when in reality it's something very bad behind the scenes. And I read a long time ago that Satan will use all sorts of things, including even up to scripture, to speak to and deceive us. And so you were doing what you thought was right. You were going after what you thought that American dream, that white picket fence dream was. And then all that came crashing down around you. Really, there were things leading up to that, but you were arrested, and then that's when we had another conversation. You were awaiting your trial. And so then fast forward, you're sitting in the courtroom. You said, I will not plead guilty. And then the judge's gavel wraps the podium and says guilty, and you're sentenced to, your sentence was 5 years, but you only had to serve 4. Okay, so you're there, like what went through your head in that moment? And then we'll get to, like, once you're at your lowest point. But, like, then, like, because you had been believing, like, okay, like, God's going to get me through this. Like God got me out of that toxic relationship. He got me back home. You know, I just want to kind of move on with my life now, put the pieces back together, and then this happens to you. So, yeah, what was that like?
Oh, goodness. Well, it was... like I said, I think I even had conversations with you before that happened, and like, you have this, which sounds now even saying it, but I hadn't had a relationship with, I hadn't been pursuing that relationship with God for probably a year and a half. But yet I'm sitting here expecting him to do what I want him to do, and I'm expecting him to save me the way I wanted him to save me. But ultimately he had his own plan. But that moment was something I didn't think would happen. I mean, there was a little bit of denial there for sure. I mean, I'd been denying a lot of things for 2 years straight, so that wasn't anything that was new to me. Like, I'd been thinking that everything was, you know, perfectly fine for a long time, and it wasn't. So that moment was definitely like hitting a brick wall. It was like, okay, this is not happening the way I want it to happen. You know, you're angry.
Very angry.
You're okay, well, I wanted you to save me, but this isn't the way I wanted it to happen. Like I said, definitely a lot of anger. I didn't think that I was angry at God, for not doing it the way that I wanted him to do it. I was hurt for even though I hadn't been pursuing God actively, like, I still thought he was supposed to care about me. Right. And that wasn't what, didn't look like he was really caring for me very much.
Yeah.
Like, why would you want me to go to a place that, in my mind, wouldn't help me grow a relationship with you? Like, I had no idea what, like, that plan was. But it was definitely a very turning point necessarily to not necessarily growing yet, and not even, like, being to where I thought this was going to be a positive, but I don't know. It was
so anger was really your initial reaction. It was a lot of anger.
That kind of really, I don't need to say much else because that pretty much sums it up.
Sure.
I was flat out angry.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, yeah. Well, and I will say, like, I mean, because I went from a horrible situation, right, and I felt like God was putting me in another one.
Sure. Right.
Like, why are you taking me out of this one thing and putting me into another one? Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem like it's very beneficial for our relationship right now. Right. So yeah, it was a lot of confusion as to why that was happening. Right. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna ask you another question. First, I want to go through the comments really quickly. Usually I have someone just manning the comments. Oh, I can't go through them. Anyway, I saw Jonathan say hello. I see Amy popping in to say hey. Here, maybe I can see the comment. No, I can't. Okay. Anyway, so thank you guys for saying hey. I'm sorry I don't have a full-time comment policer tonight, so I might miss some of them because I really want to engage in this conversation. Joni is watching over here. Great to see you. Bethany Bauer just came on. I'm so glad that everyone's here. So, in case you can hear that, my Jack Russell Terrier is howling upstairs because he thinks that everyone has abandoned him for life. Yes. So anyway, sorry, that strange sound. No one's being murdered. It's just a dog freaking out. Okay. So you go through that moment, you're angry. Mm-hmm. And then, like, I remember, like, I was coming to visit you, and I talk about this in the book, like, for the first year, like, both of us were really angry and confused. Mm-hmm. Angry at your ex, and angry at God, and angry at the system, and all the things. Mm-hmm. And then, all we could talk about was, oh, your appeal. We're going to appeal it. It's going to get overturned. Yep. You're going to get out. It's going to be fine. Yep. And then, like, a year later, like, the appeal, like, we hear back on the appeal, and it's like, no, that's not working. Nope. So you're really in jail for another 3 years. So,
what?
Yeah, right. Now what?
Now this is serious.
Hashtag. So again, for those of you just joining, this is my friend Jessica. She is chapter 12 in Now What? A Story of Broken Dreams and the God Who Restores Them, which is my book that came out last year. So, but again, even if you've read her story, we're going to go way past what's in the book tonight. So it's going to be exciting. So when you were at that lowest point in your life, when you're at that now what moment, and, this picture that you had for your life and all the dreams that you're going after are no more, right? So, like, how did you picture your life then? Like, what was that like?
Well, honestly, sitting in prison, like you said, there was we were talking about the appeal, and that was something to hang on to for a while. Right. So it kind of, which, looking back on it, I almost wish that, not that it was obviously part of the process, but I wish it wouldn't have kind of been part of the process, because it was just it was a procrastination point from really just diving into why God wanted me to be there and accepting the situation. For me, the hardest things, like, sometimes to accept are the ones that you feel like you could have avoided, or that you should have been better than, or I should have known that. I should have known better. As
a Christian, like the weight and that shame weighs on you really heavily.
Like, this shouldn't have been something that I should have fallen for.
Right.
This wasn't me. This wasn't typical to, I thought I was pretty independent, and I thought I knew things, and, like, that was not something. So that was hard to kind of wrap your head around. Like, this should have been something I should have been able to see.
Sure.
Especially diving into a relationship with God and trying to figure things out, and, like, well, if you should have seen it, if anybody, and you should have prevented this from happening, and why did this happen? And I didn't. So having that, after that was over with, it honestly was probably the beginning of, a different journey in that time, and really not accepting it, but knowing the purpose of why I was, probably put there. And I'm sure we're going to go in a little bit later,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I didn't know what that purpose was, but I knew that there was one.
Right.
And kind of moving past that low point to, I didn't like what I was going through. And I could never say that I even thought it was fair or that it didn't hurt, because it hurt like hell. And there was a lot of times that weren't comfortable.
Right.
But that was the point, that whether it was fair or not, or whether it didn't hurt, wasn't the point anymore. But it was that, whatever God was doing right now was serving a purpose for actually probably the reason that I was here for.
Right.
And I still don't, know everything about that, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And that, was definitely a great turning point to learning, accepting why I was there and diving into that time, because I had time to myself. I had time. It was just me and God. It was our time, and it was our time.
Right.
And that became what it was after that.
Right.
Like it was hard. Like I said, I'm not denying that it didn't hurt. And it wasn't hard. But it was our time to learn. And I've mentioned this in my chapter, but like, it was time for God to tell me again how he loved me and what that meant again. I had someone tell you, I love you. And that term got so skewed for me that it wasn't even funny. Yeah. So actually, like I mentioned, like I reference to the book, but like the Redeeming Love book, if you've ever read that by Francine Rivers, but that it's just a story of God's love for his children and how he chases after you, and just teaching me all those things all over again, even more so than I knew the first time. Right. Yeah. So that was definitely after that it was a hard but wonderful thing at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I have talked with you guys before about Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It is an incredible book. It's a novel based on the book of Hosea from the Bible. So it's written in modern day times. So she just kind of takes the story and makes it modern day. But it's about this man who falls in love and then subsequently marries a prostitute. And she keeps leaving him and going back to her old life, but every time he keeps chasing after her and going and rescuing her. And it's all a parallel for God's love for us. And that's what Jessica experienced for sure. I know I've experienced that before in my life. But yeah, so you're in that place, you're in the low place. And, at that point, you couldn't see any hope for your future. You couldn't see ever getting to that dream place again. And I know, like when I went through, our stories are so different, but we ended up in the same place, right? And your story doesn't have to be divorce, and your story doesn't have to be, I went to jail for 4 years. It can be anything that when you get to that place, this is what I call your now what moment. When you get to that place where you feel like, I have blown what my life was supposed to look like. I have ruined it. Really? I've just jacked it up. Yeah. Completely. And like beyond redemption is the way that you feel.
Can't even imagine how it would happen.
You've gone too far, you've messed up too badly. And again, all that shame comes in of, well, you should have known better. But yeah, it's too far gone. There's no way that God can use you ever again. You've just blown it. You've blown your purpose. You've blown your life. And, now you just have to suffer the consequences. And, I'm sure that many of you have been there before, or maybe you're there right now. And so when you're in that place, it's really hard to be hopeful at all, because your vision is so clouded and so skewed that you just can't see how there can ever be a future for you, how God could ever make anything good out of the mess that you've made. So I heard Steve Furtick talk about once, excuse me, my voice is getting a little scratchy. Steve Furtick talk about, it's really easy for us to believe that when we get, that when God leads us into a situation and it goes all a train wreck, like it's really easy for us to believe that he'll come in there and redeem it. But when it's a situation that we've gotten ourselves into, you kind of said this, that we've gotten ourselves into that, like we should have known better, it's really hard to believe that God's going to be able to come in and meet us in that place and get us out of that.
Yeah, because it was our fault.
Right, it's our fault. And so you
Yeah.
feel like, well, then I just have to deal with these consequences because I brought this on myself and this is just what I deserve. And there are all these voices that go in there and tell you all these things that just aren't true. So yeah, you're in that place. You can't see any hope for your future. You can't see how your dream life's ever going to be again. But in the book, you say that your family got to witness the literal transformation of your thoughts and belief to being that your life was essentially over to then hope and reconciliation. And you've kind of already alluded to what some of that kind of looked like, but tell me when that happened and how that happened. Like, was there a specific moment? Did God say something to you? Was it something you heard? Was it something you read? Was it a revelation you had that you went, oh no, wait, I think God can use this. Like, I think God can use this situation and it's not all for naught.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was one specific situation. I think that's probably something he proved to me over time. Because it was probably something that he even was telling me, and I didn't necessarily believe it too. So it's something that he had to keep continuous, like, Jessica,
right?
I love you,
right?
In case you forgot, I told you that yesterday.
Right.
I told you it last week, but I just want to make sure you're aware. Still, that's still the situation. That's still this. I still got this. And I think for, it didn't need. For me at that point in time, I didn't need, like I said, it was something that he kind of told me over time. I can't really recall like one specific instance where that was probably the case, but like I said, it was our time, so I did just spend a lot of time reading my Bible, and things were just started popping off the pages that related to my situation, and I care about you, I love you, I'm here, and I didn't need a reason. When those things started to happen, like I didn't need a reason anymore so much as to why I was there, but honestly it became a reassurance that I'm here.
Right. Yeah.
That I'm not going to tell you the reason right now.
Right.
And you don't need to know the reason right now, but I'm reassuring you that I'm here.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this together, and I have a purpose. And that's really when our relationship started to kind of grow back together again. Like, all right, I believe you.
Right.
I believe what you're telling me. And there's so many instances that even being in prison, like, God had my back. I mean, that place is a horrible situation, and it can be so bad. And I could count on toes, fingers, hands, whatever, the times that I watched situations blow over my head that could have been horrible. So he was just showing me that, I'm here. I got this. This is something. I know you got to stay here for a while, and this is where you got to be for a while, and I'm sorry, but I got you.
Right.
So.
You said, when we were talking beforehand, you said, you spent so much time questioning, was this God or was this Satan that did this to me? And you finally got to a point where you said, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't need a reason for why this happened. I don't need to know all the answers. I just need to know that, like, there is going to be purpose from this.
Yeah, I needed that revelation. It was, instead of a reason, it became a revelation that there's a purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And once you have that revelation, then that there's going to be a purpose for this, that it's not, like, I'm not just going through this for nothing, that we can use it, that there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel, then hope is reinstilled in your life. And that's really the most important thing. Because I know, and we talked about this too beforehand, that, when I got to that place after my divorce, that I felt like there was no hope for my future and that I had just blown it, then, the enemy loves to play with your thoughts in that time. And we've talked about that a lot in different videos. But, for me, like my thoughts got down to the point that the thought that I was having was, it's better for everyone else if I'm not around. And I wasn't thinking about suicide. That isn't what I was thinking about yet, but that's a very suicidal thought. That's a mindset that someone gets into, that if you really accept that and believe that truth for yourself, then that's when people start making those types of decisions to end their life, because they truly believe that It's better for everyone else if they're not around. And thank God, God intervened when he did in my life. Once my thoughts got to that place, that's when he intervened and showed me. He really uncovered all the lies that were rolling around in my head that I didn't realize. And I talk about all that. That's chapter 4 in my book when I really go into detail about that. But thank God for that.
He saved my life.
Right.
I mean, that's why I've said that before. I mean, it's like if he wouldn't have done something, my gosh, I mean, I don't even know if I'd be sitting here telling you this right now.
Right. To get you out of the relationship that you're in that situation. Yeah. So even though, like you said, like he didn't save you, he didn't get you out of that toxic, dangerous, life-threatening situation like you wanted him to, he did save you from that. Right. And so yes. So God uses all sorts of the bad things to get to the good things. So now you guys are kind of up to speed. That's really kind of what Jess talks about in her story is, hey, I see how God can use this. And what I love that you talk about this, and I want to read a couple excerpts in here, because what she talks about is, okay, I'm starting to get glimpses of how God's going to be able to use this, and I don't see what that even looks like yet, but I live in this hopeful anticipation that there is going to be something. That he is going to be able to use this. And I know that with an assurance that can't be shaken. And she says, my daily goal is to make myself available to God for him to use me in this place. So like sitting in jail, there were times you told me stories about how other girls would reach out to you that were going through similar situations or whatever, and you were able to talk to them and give them hope even while you were still there with them.
Yep.
And so that gave you a little bit of sense of purpose, like, well, he can use me even while I'm here. And then you said there can be victory prior to complete fruition of dreams. I will still have that final whistle victory, but now I believe more so in the smaller victories that happen prior to the end of the game, the successful play, the yards gained, and the foul shots earned. Now, for Jessica in her life, she talks about these have come in the form of God bringing people back into my life and restoring relationships, creating a stronger bond between me and my family than I could have ever imagined, and learning to love deeper than I ever have before, and having my faith expanded. So again, those were small victories that you were experiencing even while you're behind bars.
Sure.
And I love that. And what I say in the book is that even though, because I wrote this book, I wrote this chapter, and Jessica wrote this chapter while you were still incarcerated. And I said,
on paper, mail it to you.
Right, exactly. In the mail, I got the letter. So even though she was currently incarcerated, Jessica was the freest person that I knew. And it was absolutely amazing for me to watch, the transformation that you made from the time you went in there, and just the anger and the bitterness and the confusion and the doubt and the anger and more of the anger to then, like, you were just so peaceful about everything. You were just so free. And it was like, you know what, like, I'm here until God decides me to get me out of here, and it's all going to be just fine. And while I'm here, I'm going to take advantage of this time that I have just to slow down and be unplugged and just spend time with him. Yeah. And I'm going to be used in whatever way I can while I'm here. And like, you guys, like, are you kidding me right now? Like, so amazing. Like, I would go to visit her in jail, but then I would leave like more blessed by the situation than like her, because she just, the things that she would teach me and her whole outlook and her whole, just her whole mindset was just amazing.
It's those small victories.
Yes.
That's the mindset that, it's those, like, I think in, outside of prison and in prison, we get so focused on the end game.
Yes.
And that end game isn't it. That end game is not even close to where the greatest blessings come. Right. It's before that. Right, yeah. It's in the middle.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. And so she says, my life is now one of hope and anticipation. This is while she's in jail, you guys. The devil tries to convince me that God is not going to work this out for the good. He likes to tell me that I've messed things up too badly for anything that I've dreamed about to come true. My dreams and goals seem to be the same. They've just been altered a bit to fit the story God has now made for me. And so I love that. She says, my story is still being written, but I'm confident that the Lord's perfect timing of this will bring about the biggest testimony my life has seen to this point. And it's true, and I'm seeing it like every day in front of me today now. So all that's awesome. Now I want to talk about, so yeah, you get those visions in prison and you're like, this is going to be great. It's all going to work out. And then you get out and then you come home. Yes. And then what happened?
Then it sucks.
Right?
No,
yes.
That's kind of, no, it's not an overstatement at all.
No, it's not. Yeah.
It's like,
because you're this high mountain peak experience and
yes.
you're expecting like, oh my gosh, I'm free and everything's gonna be awesome. And then you're like, woo, all the way down.
Yeah, like everything, I'm free. Everything's supposed to be awesome.
Right.
Life is supposed to be all unicorns and rainbows, and it's not. And
right.
this is not what I wanted. But yeah, it was definitely, you know, it's like I survived that, but okay, now it was time to figure out why.
Right.
But there was definitely a time period of you get out of, like you said, you get out of that situation, which is a very different lifestyle. There's you make no decisions for yourself.
Right.
You other than small things like reading the Bible, but even that is prevented sometimes.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that are not under your control, but so you get out and expect things just to be so awesome. Like, how could anything be bad because I'm not in prison anymore? Like, everything's supposed to be great, but there's definitely a transition time period, right. And it's like we were talking, like definitely that wilderness experience where it's like, okay, I'm still circling.
Right.
I'm out of prison, but I'm still circling.
Right.
Why am I still circling?
Well, because you came out, right, and you expected just to like hit the ground running and go on with your life and go on into those dreams that you had. But, there is a transition that needs to be made. There is a reintegration period. And you said, the words that you've said to me many times were, like everybody else's life went on for the last 4 years and like mine was put on pause. So I come out and I have to catch up to all of that. And then you've also said, things that you said to me is, I feel very stuck. Like I want these things for myself. I want these big dreams. But the reality is I have all this debt. I can't get a job. I'm living back at home with my parents. I don't have a vehicle. So coming out and then going into that situation, right?
Crap,
right?
Yeah, it's definitely hard,
right? And you talked about the mental battles that you had to go through then.
Yeah, I mean, and not even. I mean, Matt was still a part of my life. I came out of prison, and he was that. I was still right in that same situation. I mean, I had to see him after I got out of prison.
Right.
Like, I had to go to a courthouse and come face to face with the person that I had spent so much time recovering from.
Right.
Like, he was like, God, he's still here.
Right.
Like, why is he still here?
Right.
Like, okay, you took me out of there. Okay, I got that. Okay, got to prison. Okay, I've come to terms with that. Know why the purpose of that is. I don't know why this is a part of any purpose right now. Right. So, like, just little things like that, and the whole, the system doesn't make it easy for you. Like I said, owing money and just, I know what I was capable of creating for myself in a life, and I didn't feel like I could do that anymore.
Right, yeah.
Like you said, with the job and different things like that. I've never done it this way.
Right.
I've never had to go to a job interview and check that box that, yes, I have a felony on my record, and you want me to explain to you why.
Right.
And you want to tell me that I may be qualified for this job, but not anymore, you're not.
Right.
But in your head you are. Like, I know I'm qualified for this. Right. I can do this. And so that's definitely a gut check to, okay, I spent all this time, like we were talking about, like just knowing there's a purpose and knowing there's a reason, and you get out and it's challenged so hard. Like, do I really believe this? Did I really get to know about this God that I thought I did?
Right.
Did I mess it up?
Right.
Did I maybe learn it wrong?
Right.
Did I believe wrong? So it starts to come back on you again, that you think you did it wrong, or you didn't, maybe I didn't have the faith that I thought I had.
That's hard.
Yeah.
So what that reminds me of is I just read Joe Saxton. So I don't know if you guys know who Joe Saxton is, but she's a writer and a speaker. She just released a brand new book earlier this year, and I was fortunate enough to be on the launch team, so you may have seen me post about it a few times. The book is called The Dream of You. And in that book, I'm reading along, and I really love to listen to Joe Saxton live. Like, I like to listen to her talk. But I start reading that book, and I was like, I don't like reading Joe Saxon. And there are some people like that. Like, there are certain speakers and authors that, like, I like to listen to, but I don't like to read, or vice versa. I like to read certain people I can't stand to listen to. So that's fair. That happens. Mm-hmm. But I, like, just couldn't get into the book at all until I got to chapters 8, 9, and 10. And then I was like, who the heck is this chick inside my life right now? Like, it was so crazy, because in that book, she starts talking about the Israelites. And in the Old Testament, the Jewish people had lived in slavery to the Egyptians for 400 years. And then God said, okay, he made them this promise. I'm going to give you this promised land. I'm going to set you free. I'm going to get you out of slavery. I'm going to get you out of bondage, out of captivity. And so he finally comes through on that promise, and they're set free, and they're led out of captivity. They're out of Egypt. And then they get out, and it's like, yay, we're free! Where's that promised land we heard so much about? And they're just in the middle of the desert. And that's all they were. And they wandered around in the desert for 40 years. It wasn't like, they had to spend a couple weeks there while they were hiking to the promised land. Actually, I've heard Joyce Meyer talk about this, that it was only an 11-day trip from Egypt to the promised land. But it took them 40 years. It was supposed to be 11 days. There wasn't MapQuest and GPS back then. I just said MapQuest. That's like saying AOL. Yes. That's so old. Yeah. Anyway, there wasn't AOL Google Messenger. Maps then. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so they wandered around the desert. But the point was, and the point that Joe makes in those chapters is, they got out of captivity. They got out of bondage, out of slavery, but they still had a lot of captivity and bondage inside them. So there were still things that God needed to work on inside them in that season. There were still places of them that he needed to heal, brokenness that he needed to come in and address and fix before they could go on to that promised land and into their purpose. And she talks about how, yes, there's the wilderness, and then there's the full-on valley. And I'm reading these chapters like bawling my eyes out, because I had lived that for the last year. Like 2017 was my wilderness and valley, and I didn't even know it, because I had that high mountaintop experience, like Jessica talked about, like releasing my book at the end of 2016. And then I'm thinking like it's going to be all uphill from there. And I went way, way, way down. And I was just wandering around trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing next? Why does it feel like everything is on hold? Why does it feel like I'm not just moving forward and moving upward and on to into everything that I thought that you said to me? Did I hear that wrong? Mm-hmm. Was this all me? Was this my idea and not yours? Yep. Like all those things that you hear and that you wander around and you lose hope all over again. Right. And so you're wondering like, well, is this all there is? You said that. Yeah. So yeah, is this all there is? That I released my book and, had a couple book signings and that's it. Like I pictured myself speaking on stages by now and all these things. And it wasn't because of me. This is what I felt like God was calling me to. And this is what he wanted to do with this message. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't as far and as fast as I wanted it to be. And so I was very much in that wilderness and very much in that valley that you experienced the same way. And it was funny because we would even talk and you'd be like, girl, like I'm in the same place. But again, like for two totally different reasons. Yeah. It's so crazy. Yeah. So anyway, reading that book, like if you feel like you might be in a place like that or if whatever, I would definitely check out that book because it is, like I'm telling you, like Joe's all up inside your personal business. But she talks about how the whole time, even though, and this is just like the Israelites, the whole time they were out there wandering through the desert, God never left them. The whole time. The whole time they were in the wilderness, he was providing for them. He was providing them manna. He was providing them water. For 40 years, their clothes and their shoes never wore out. All that stuff lasted for 40 years. You can't tell me that's not supernatural. So that's what that reminds me of, is that was your wilderness and your valley, coming out of bondage, but then still not going right into the promised land. And now I feel like the world
was just a reminder of everything that you didn't have.
Yeah, that's true.
The world was like going back into it. It was just a reminder of, okay, I because you were being everything in prison, you were away from it. Yep. So I was able to grow in that area, but I wasn't surrounded by it. So you go back into the world, and it's a test. It was a test for me to really, kind of, okay, did I get this? And I'm on this, but the world was a reminder of everything that I had lost. Right. And so going past that,
Well, and that's so funny that you say that, because I just thought it back to the story of the Israelites again. Like when they were in the desert, like they came out of slavery, right? Like their life was not good. And in the desert, because it was hard, they were like, oh, maybe we should go back to slavery, where at least we had like three squares a day, right? Like, and we didn't have to worry about all this chaos or whatever. And so, yeah, like you can definitely have those thoughts of like, oh man, this is crazy out here. Is my computer shutting down? What is happening? Yep, my computer's going to restart. Whatevs. Okay, well, I'm about to log off over here. For all of you watching on my personal page, go over to Rachel Dawn Writer Speaker and log on real quick. Hang on, I'll give you a link. Go away! Okay, so come watch me over there. You guys, can we talk about how technology is freaking ridiculous? Rachel Dawn writes, go find me over there. We're streaming from both places. You can pick up right where we're leaving off. Thanks for joining in, Andrew, and your comments. So my computer's about to go. It's going to restart itself. This is so ridiculous. Okay. So anyway, we'll keep talking to you guys over here. Just let it be. Just let it be. So yes, everybody hop on over here. Hop on to the writer page. And we'll pick up. Yeah. Whichever. Anyway, so we're talking about the wilderness experience. We're talking about you in that season of your story. Yes. So now I feel like your toes are inside the promised land.
Yeah.
And you are starting to get to see God bring some of that vision to life and bring some of those promises that he made you 3 years ago now? Have you been out for 3 years?
2.
Okay.
No? Yes.
It'll be 3 in April, won't it?
3 in June.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 2.5. So some of that's starting to come to fruition. So talk about that. Tell me in what ways God is redeeming your story, what opportunities you've had, things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, again, I mentioned it, like, obviously in the book, and that, I knew those things were coming. So now it's time, and God's like, okay, I'm going to start, okay, like, obviously it's in his timing. Right. So we're starting to get to that time where I feel like, obviously there's still, like I said, there's still days where, I do struggle with the reality of things, right. But relying on, those things that start coming. We do have just for one example, we have a program actually through Crossroads that, I started volunteering with, and they actually didn't have this program at Crossroads when I went to prison, so I didn't even know. Crossroads
is my church in Cincinnati. Our church in Cincinnati. Not everybody knows.
Sorry.
That's yes. Okay. That's okay.
But yeah, the church, they actually have an organization called the 4-7. So I've started volunteering with that organization, and to get out of, and I heard about it just at a church service, yeah. And so to get out of prison and to hear about this, like, it was just the most amazing thing to, like, they offer that. Right. So I'm going to go back there, which it was a battle in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a crazy story. So the point of the ministry is they go into the prison. So mm-hmm. Most people in the program are not former convicts. So they're just going to visit prisoners at the prison, mm-hmm. to relate to them, minister to them, talk mm-hmm. to them. You said mostly just to listen to them, yeah. Because they don't have people that genuinely want to hear them, yeah. Want to listen to them. So yes, your first time going back there was back around Christmas.
Yes.
And I remember, like, you told me, like, I'm going to go back.
And they're going to keep me.
Right. Like, you were freaking out.
I was freaking out, yes.
Like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, obviously, like, God has opened this door for me to go back to the same freaking prison that I was in. Are you kidding me? And yeah. Be able to minister to people. Yeah. But you're like, I don't want to go. Yeah. Like, I know it's him, but I don't want to go.
Like, are you, no, this isn't you, right?
Tell me this isn't you. Can we go to another prison? Like
no, but I mean, and there's options to go to other prisons, but I really just felt called to go there.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, why? Of course.
Right.
They're going to call me to go there. That's fine. We're going to go there. I'm like, look, they're legit going to keep me. They're going to know I was here, and they're going to change their mind, and they're not going to let me back out. So it was a legit fear that sounds so crazy.
Right.
But that, I mean, honestly, going back in there, and that's just one of many, but just definitely something that's very prevalent in my mind. But going into that door again, into walking back in that prison freely, and walking back out and having the experience with women in there. Like, after I left there that day, I could never tell myself that God wasn't going to redeem this situation again.
Right.
You couldn't convince me that wasn't the case.
Right.
Like, I'm really here, like you said, I'm really I'm in the same darn place.
Right.
I could give you a tour of it. And I'm talking with women and I'm getting to pray with them, and I know what they're feeling, and they're coming to me with their concerns, and I'm able to listen to them and to hear them and just care about them on a level that's so deep that, just like I said, just to be able to pray with them and to tell them, like, I didn't really get to interact with them much the first time, but we went back there yesterday and had a whole program for them, and it came up in conversation, I waited kind of for the right time, but it just kind of came up, and I'm like, I don't know what you've been told, and I don't know what you think about yourself, but I'm sitting here right now telling you that there's hope.
Right.
I'm telling you that it does get better. I'm telling you that anything that anybody's telling you can't do, it's not true.
Right.
Anything that anybody in here is telling you that's a negative, that's not true, that God loves you, that he has a plan for you, that he's not leaving you, that he's there even though you may not feel him.
Right.
And like I said, that there's hope, and they're like, just to see the light on their faces when I told them that, it was just like no one had told them that.
Right. Well, and you said, they didn't know who she was. She's just one of the volunteers. And so when she got to the point where she got to work it in a conversation, like, oh, P.S., I'm not just making this up. Like, I was here, 2.5 years ago, I was sitting on the other side of the table, and I was you. And you said the girls were just,
what?
Oh my God,
what?
Wait, what?
Really?
Really?
Like, you look fine.
Right, yeah, you look okay.
Yeah.
And just immediately that spark in their eyes of hope, that oh my gosh, if she can do it, so can I. If God can do that with her, then he can do that with me. And that is so incredible. And, I know, obviously my story is, I went through divorce and really hit my rock bottom, and then God has brought me out, and he had me write a book, and he had me speaking in front of people and things like that. And you've got an opportunity to share your story from stages and speak, and you're going to have, it's more and more of those are coming. The doors keep opening. And I'm not telling you that the only way that God redeems stories is to have you write books and speak on stage. But I'm just saying, it's a pretty effective tactic. And especially when you have a story that
I'm not pursuing any of them.
Right.
I haven't pursued a darn of them. They just happen, and I'm like, yes. But I do believe that God wants you to share your story in some capacity. I don't care if it's just one-on-one. I have a friend who has gone through an abortion, and when she went through that, there was a woman at her church who was the youth pastor's wife, I believe, if it wasn't the pastor's wife, who took her aside in the corner and had a conversation with her one-on-one. Hey, I know exactly what you're going through because I've been there too. I had an abortion too. And that pastor's wife isn't standing on stages talking about how she had an abortion and how she's recovered from that and found forgiveness and grace and God's redemption in her abortion story, but she's pulling people aside and having conversations with them in the corner, and that's changing people's lives too. That's saving people's lives too. Definitely,
So I do know that God is going to have you tell your story, even if it's just one-on-one, to other people. And so
he'll give you people.
He will
He'll give you people.
He will absolutely put people in your life, in your path, who need to hear your story. And how can you not? How could you not tell them at that point? So I didn't even have this written down, but yes, if you want to tell your story, or if you have never told your story before, or whatever, if you want help doing that, I actually have in the back of my book is the Now What Story questionnaire. And it's this interview, basically questionnaire that I wrote to help me interview the people whose stories I tell in the second half of my book. And so it's just a really great guideline that kind of leads you through, okay, how did you see your life going? And then what happened that kind of took you to rock bottom? What was in that rock bottom place? And then how has God redeemed it? But the questions kind of take you through that storyline. So if you've never done that before, I highly recommend you either pull that out from the back of my book, grab a copy of it, or it's actually on my website. So if you go to nowwhatstory.com, there is a place where it says tell your story, and because I want to hear your stories, and so you can submit it to me if you'd like, or if you just want to copy that the survey or the questionnaire off of there and fill it out for your own self, just for yourself, you can do that. But yeah, I mean, go on there. The survey is on there. The questionnaire is on there. Fill that out and just, have it's basically a blueprint for how to tell your story in the way that will really, really be impactful for people. Really bring people hope.
And it helps you too.
Oh my gosh,
it
yes.
Helps you.
Yeah.
Like, it's so healing to just tell
yes.
your story, because you don't think just telling those words are going to, you think you're actually trying to help other people.
Right.
But it comes right back
right.
at you.
There were so many people that when I was going through the questionnaire with them had revelations about their story that they never had before, that they were able to see how God put the pieces together in retrospect that they had never gotten before. So definitely, I recommend that you go do that. I'll put a link to it in the comments after we're done. But that's super awesome. So, okay, so one thing, and we're going to try to wrap up in the next 10 minutes. One thing that you said to me earlier today when we were talking was that you still have your rough days, and it still super sucks, and there are days that you battle through all sorts of things, but you are finally to a place, at least today, where you can say,
I'm glad it happened.
I'm glad that happened to me. Yep. Like, I'm glad that I spent 4 years of my life in federal prison. Because, why is that? Like, why can you say that?
Because I know without a shadow of a doubt that there is, God, it's like, when you get past that wilderness part and you get to, like, you see some of these things happen, like going to the prison, and just, like, there's a whole list of things that, we could spend a whole half hour about. But when you start to see that stuff, I'm honestly just waiting in anticipation every day. Yeah. I'm like just like a little child at Christmas every day, waiting for God to just throw something else out there, because it just puts a smile on my face. Like just little stuff that just happens all the time. And, you just couldn't convince me that there's not more that's going to happen. Right. I mean, you just can't. Yeah, so it's like, it sounds so weird to say that, but like, it's like going to the gym. Like, that, like, you don't appreciate that time that you're in there because it hurts, but I can appreciate the change that it made. I can appreciate the change that it made in me. I can appreciate the change that it made in my relationship with God, in my faith. And I don't know what, like, there, I just know that, like he says in, like, the Bible, it's just anything that we go through, like, whatever God has planned is going to be so much more than, it's going to be so much more than anything that we had to go through. Right. And I didn't believe that for a long time, but I do now. Right. I think that there's so many things that are coming.
Yeah, you quoted Philippians 1, 12 through 19. You said that this was a scripture that came to mind to you recently. And it's Paul writing letters from prison when he was in prison. Was he in prison?
Yeah, he was in a Roman prison.
Rome. And so what he said there was the purpose of his chains were to advance the kingdom. And you've had that revelation for yourself. Yeah. That by you going through what you've gone through now is the only way that you're able to help these other people. The only way that you're... And what did you say? You question sometimes, like, did it have to happen?
Did it had to happen? I mean, you think about that, like, did God have to have me do this? Right. Like, was there another way? Right. Like, I think it did. I think that was part of the story. I think that was, did he probably want it to happen? Like I said, all those questions, I don't think so. But is he going to redeem the situation? Absolutely. Yes. And like that story of Paul, is he's sitting in a Roman prison cell and telling everyone that I am in chains to advance the kingdom of God. Right. And that is why I have my chains. And he's actually, in prison. But I can say that same for now, even leaving that. I do, I will always carry that. They will always be a part of my life. Right. I will always have to check that box. But those chains are going to be, and I don't know even the whole story yet, but those chains are what's going to advance God's kingdom on earth. That's what is going to help me do that. Right, because now you have a platform. You have a platform to share from, which is awesome. And God will give every one of us a platform.
if we're seeking him and we're obedient, and he knows that he can use us. So when you said that to me earlier, I just to kind of fill you guys into the conversation, because we had a whole conversation before we started filming, so I want to make sure you guys get all of it.
Yeah.
Is that when she said that to me, I mean, that's like an awe-striking statement. Like, seriously, like you're glad that you went to jail. But no, like when you had that revelation of like, because God's going to be able to use this so greatly, and my purpose only exists because I went, like, that's like with my divorce, like, well, did I have to get divorced? What if my husband and I could have reconciled and gotten back together, and then I wouldn't have a story of divorce or what? But like, I wouldn't even be the person that I am had I not gone through that. And I definitely wouldn't be able to relate to the people that I can because I went through something like that. And so definitely, I don't believe that God made me go through that. That was my own choices, just like your situation was your own choices. But Joyce Meyer, I heard her say recently that God will let you go through things. He'll let things happen in your life that are going to draw you to him. If it's going to end up ultimately pushing you toward him, relying on him, going toward him, he's going to let it happen, because that's ultimately better for you in the long run, and will help you then accomplish your purpose. And it's crazy. Like, I heard her talking recently as well. For those of you who are familiar with Joyce Meyer or know her testimony, she was sexually abused by her dad for pretty much her entire life, like from the time she was like 4 till 17 or 18. And she had to kind of collect her thoughts to tell her testimony again within the last few years, and hadn't told it in so long. She really had to sit down and get all the details. And she was sexually abused by her father over 100 times. But she's in a place now in her life where she can honestly say that she is glad that happened to her. Because because that has given her the platform that it has today. Because that allows her to relate to so many people, to their pain, that she can today. That is just, I mean, that's the reason that she is who she is. It's the reason that she has the ministry that she does. And God has come in and healed every piece of that. He's restored every piece of everything that she ever lost. And that's what you're seeing in your life too. And it's awesome. And like, you really can't, like, really, like, it sucked. And for her, like, unimaginably, I mean, there aren't even words, right? But God's redemption is so good, you guys. He takes everything.
Oh yeah, like I said, everything. It's like Christmas. I'm waiting, just waiting,
right.
just waiting.
And,
I love it.
And it's awesome. So just know that if you're in this place where you're going, my life is over, I've screwed it up, I have whatever, like whatever you've done, I've hurt everybody in my life, I've totally let everybody down, I've blown the purpose, whatever, I have just totally sinned, just really run away from God, just spit in his face. Great. Like, we all have, you know what I mean? Like,
he's still there.
Right. Like, he's still there. Like, hey.
And
like,
actually, he's running after you more.
Right.
When you're running away, he's running faster.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about some of that earlier. So good.
Yeah.
So good. So, I think that's all we have for you guys tonight. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say to wrap up?
I'm trying to, just that, like I said, like Rachel said, if you guys, I mean, if you ever, we've all had that, we've all felt like we totally messed something up, and I just can't tell you enough that I wish for you all that one day where you experience that, that it's not a lie anymore, that God is going to redeem that, and that, when he says, I mean good for you, and that I love you, and that I care about you, that is the truth, and nothing else is true. Yeah. And there will be hard times. There will be days in the midst of those good days that don't feel so good. But just push through it and hang on to it, because, like I said, I haven't even experienced it all yet, and I don't know what it is, but I can't wait. Yeah. There's a lot of story left.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there will be the same for every one of you that have had that moment. Yeah. Like, it's going to happen. And God's going to prove way more to you than you even thought he was going to.
Right.
He's going to show you, exceed your expectations. if you thought he could love you that much, it's going to be even way more than you could think of. So.
Yep, absolutely. Amen to that. So, thank you guys for joining. You can leave us one last comment to say, hey, again, if you want to tell me your story of the time that you have felt like you totally blew it, we can chat about that. And then go tell me your story on nowwhatstory.com. And please share this video. So we will see you guys next month. That's it for hashtag Real Talk with Rachel Dawn, episode 8. We'll talk to you soon.